Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny show after what I would describe as not necessarily a season-saving game, but boy, oh boy, it feels like something was saved here tonight by the Winnipeg Jets. You take a look at that game, I was starting to think that there was no, well, actually, that's not true. I'll tell you this. Behind the headsets, there was not a belief from the Sportsnet crew that the Jets were going to get their way back into that game. I think everyone there expected a shutout. Nobody said it, because we're pros and we don't say that kind of stuff, or we don't do it often. But I had said, no, I don't think so. I think that the Jets are going to pop some. I think they're going to come back in this game is what I thought was going to happen. Now, after the Blues scored that second goal, wow, look at this. Okay. After the Blues scored that second goal, it was starting to get a little dicey. I think that second goal was another one of those upping the risk profile goals where the Jets are throwing everything that they have down ice and get caught down ice. But I think that you take a look at this game. I thought what was going to happen is this was going to be a little bit of a balancing act. And we look back at this game and say, like, look, the Winnipeg Jets were the better team on the ice that entire game. And then I thought they were going to get Connor Hellebuck. Right. I thought that this would be one of those things. Maybe this kind of stuff all evens out at the end of the game. I know that we said this last game. We had this story that we did where we showed how often the Jets have won games that they probably didn't deserve to win on the deserve to win a meter. The deserve to win a meter today was breaking off on the Jets side of things, and it looked like they were going to end up losing that game. And I was thinking, well, I guess this is the way it goes. You win some, you lose some. The Jets have won a lot more than they probably should have. But I was thinking this is the way that this was going to even out. The one thing I'll say about the Winnipeg Jets, I'm going to say a lot of things, not just one thing. They played the right way throughout the entirety of that game. I agree with Rick Bowness. It wasn't the most sterling example of Winnipeg Jets hockey because I think there was just a little bit of them being in their own heads that kind of held them back. I think they weren't scoring goals quite a bit because A, I think they're squeezing the stick already coming into this game, and then B, as good as the St. Louis Blues were and as good as Jordan Binnington was in net, that he started getting in their head. So, for example, the Pierre-Luc Dubois play where he breaks in and tries to pass across to a Saku Menelainen, who is not anywhere near that space at that point. That's the kind of things that start happening when you get it in your head that you can't beat a goaltender. And I thought maybe that's the direction they were heading in. But we get an absolutely phenomenal performance out of Josh Morrissey, who comes down and no doubt beats Jordan Binnington and then comes back later and gets a lucky bounce, sure, but he's getting the puck to the net. He's pushing it up ice. He's creating, and that's the game winner as Josh Morrissey entirely takes over. I'm going to tell you this. I know a lot of you out there get upset with Renny, and I want you to know that Renny gets upset with himself at times, and I am very upset at myself for something that I did in the last show. And what that was I doubted myself. I doubted my pick of Josh Morrissey as the MVP of the Winnipeg Jets, and I gave Ken more credit than he clearly deserved in his say that Connor Hellebuck was the MVP of this team. I'll tell you this, Connor Hellebuck came into this game 1 win out of his last 6. Do I blame him for any of those losses? No, but what we did not see as the Jets were in a tailspin and spiraling over this last little while, we did not see a Connor Hellebuck absolutely steal a game and turn the momentum of the season for the Winnipeg Jets the way that we saw from Josh Morrissey tonight, who is now jumping back into the conversation for the Norris Trophy with a performance like that because he was just absolutely everywhere tonight, defensively, offensively. We may look back. We'll have to see. But mark this game on your calendars, ladies and gentlemen, when it's time to make our final arguments about the MVPs of the season. As he was about to leave Winnipeg, bags packed already, and head down to Florida to represent the Winnipeg Jets as the first All-Star from the Winnipeg Jets down in Florida. Josh Morrissey took care of business and swung things. There was a big feeling to this game. I want to get into this a little bit later because it reminds me of something else. But Mark this on your calendars, ladies and gentlemen, because when the final votes are in for MVP of the year, I get the sense that you may be looking back at this game as a little bit of a turning point, and you will be looking at the individual performance of Josh Morrissey, who took what I thought was a fragile team, even in this game, even as they played well, was a fragile team, a psychologically fragile team, and grabbed them, threw him on his shoulders, and went down and won that game. Phenomenal game by Josh Morrissey. That's my take on it. We'll have to get Kenny's take. Something tells me Kenny will fight this because that's what Kenny does. He wants to fight it. He doesn't want to admit when Rennie's wrong. He still thinks that they should have traded for someone so that they could get through the month of December with all those injuries. He's a stubborn guy. We all know this. He's a stubborn guy. So let's bring Kenny in and he can show us just how stubborn he is. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny. I'll tell you something, Ken. Our chat room is on fire already. They're hitting all the high notes. Ron Lott says, Renny, you were right all along. Morrissey is the MVP of this team. Don't doubt yourself. Thank you, Ron. This will carry me through the sleepless nights that I will have.
Yell louder. Yell louder.
Stonewall Dave says, thumbs up for Sean's incredible humility there. I very much appreciate that. Thumbs up. Hit the thumbs up, everybody, if you agree with Stonewall Dave's take. Enor Tap says, Lou Ferlin always tells you, Sean, not to doubt yourself. I don't think Lou Ferlin ever doubts himself, nor should he ever, and nor should Renny. Kenny, are you ready to eat humble pie, or are you going to fight me on this one?
I'd be happy to eat when I step to the buffet, except for the part in the conversation where you talked about the Sport Logic stats that said the Jets had no business winning so many of those games earlier in the year when Connor Hellebuck was bailing them out. It was clearly a MVP type of performance for Josh Morrissey today, and I will happily reiterate he's having a tremendous season, one that is All-Star worthy and also worthy of Norris Trophy discussion. I would say he certainly has the gap shrinking, but no, I am not ready to change my vote yet. Though I am happy to, in our business we use the word tease a little bit. I had just a fantastic conversation with Josh this morning after the morning skate about his season, about a couple of other things, and what it means for him to be attending the All-Star game. That story will run on Thursday at sportsnet.ca. I also spoke with Josh's brother Jake this afternoon. Just some tremendous family insight for a what is going to be just an incredible family event. We have talked about the trials and tribulations that family has endured over the last couple of years with Josh and Jake losing their father Tom to a courageous battle with cancer, but Josh's got a great contingent going down to South Florida for the All-Star break, and he is a very deserving participant. It's something that means an awful lot to him, especially what he had to endure both on and off the ice. And, like I said, I can't wait to write the story. I just had a great conversation with him. His night was tremendous, Sean. 27 minutes, 27 seconds of ice time, 7 shots on goal, 11 shot attempts, 3 hits, 3 block shots, and Josh Morrissey channeling his inner Tom Brady with a let's effing go, whipping the crowd into an absolute frenzy. We've talked often about the vibe in the building at times, and it hasn't got back to those 2018 playoff levels for a while, but this was a reminder that the building can really rock when the moments get rolling. And we both know Josh is a pretty reserved person by nature. He has incredible passion for the sport, but he doesn't often show it outwardly the way that he did today. I know you got some great insight from him, and Josh admitted himself there's been tension around this team. There's been tension around the group in the times where they went 2-5 in the previous 7 games and had scored 2 goals or fewer in 6 of 8. So I loved Josh's openness. I loved his emotion. I loved his passion, and quite frankly, loved the performance. It was just an absolute that's an absolute Picasso of a performance from someone who was not going to be denied. In typical Josh Morrissey fashion, he talked about the group itself. I asked him about the difference makers being challenged, and he said the group was great, and the guys that are counted on to put up points and make big contributions, well, they got on the score sheet, but the guys who didn't get on the score sheet still felt like they could have a piece of that game, whether it was Nikolai Ehlers drawing a couple penalties, or if it was somebody getting a big blocked shot or throwing a big hit, or a hit and pin along the boards. It was an impressive showing by a team that they had been pushed on the ropes. They had taken a couple uppercuts. You started to wonder if they might get put to the mat here by a Central Division opponent that had their number in the 2019 playoff race, but the Jets have kind of turned the tables in a lot of the regular season efforts of late, for sure. But I think it was impressive, Sean, the Jets' ability to not waver at a time where it would have been easy to sort of stray. I think there'd been plenty of chances against Jordan Binnington. Not a lot of them where they were taking his eyes away, and like you talked about, Sean, they weren't getting to the blue paint as well. They had given up a couple good looks again, and I think kind of Pierre-Luc Dubois, yes, he certainly overthought the rush with Menelainen, but he kind of ran himself. I mean, he still had a shot available, but he kind of put himself at a bad angle in order to try to go bar down on that play. But there too, like when a team is struggling to find offense, you overthink things, you overpass, you look for a perfect play, and I think that the Jets kind of got back to basics in that third period. And man, the puck movement on the Mark Scheifele goal, just absolutely tremendous. Kyle Connor finding Ehlers one touch to Scheifele, and number 30 was an absolute beauty through the wickets of Jordan Binnington. That tied the game, and then Josh Morrissey delivers his second of the game, the game winner, banking it off, fortunate bounce, banking it off Braden Shen. But in terms of the Jets' effort, Sean, I thought it was quite impressive. I mean, was it a full, it wasn't a perfectly played game, but in terms of the template, the structure was much more sound. Jets gave up drastically less, as Rick Bowness said, and their offense woke up, quite frankly. And leading the charge was Morrissey, and also Mark Scheifele also did his part in that contest as well.
First off, before we get too deep into this, I got to say you're looking mighty dapper, as you always are, Ken. I think
not
I'm
as
doing
dapper
okay.
as
Although,
you, though. Not as dapper as you.
I'll tell you, I walked out under the Jets tunnel, and Chris Kreviazek, who works for the Jets, cousin of Chantel Kreviazek, great guy, stylish dude, good-looking dude. I walk out, and we're basically wearing the same outfit. And it was another one of those moments that you and I had. You didn't think it was the same outfit?
He's a sharp burgundy. You got a little bit more pattern in yours. I'm giving you the nod on this one. Krevy is a sharp dresser.
We're wearing the same color of shoes. We're wearing the tan-colored shoes with the tan-colored belt. The only
difference
similar is that he had and I do have from the folks at Vittorio Rossi. I've got the matching tie that is blue with the red highlights in it, which can go with the suit. So he kind of played off it a little bit, but now I've got two of you who I have to call ahead of time to make sure that that we're wearing the right stuff here. I don't know if Chris Kreviazek goes to the boys at Vittorio Rossi, but he sure looked good enough that maybe he had. But I'll tell you, my guess is he has, because the boys at Vittorio Rossi down on Corden Avenue, they know how to make you look good. You want to look good, you want to look like Kenny or Renny, head on down to see Frankie and the boys at Vittorio Rossi. Tell them Kenny and Renny sent you, and I guarantee you they will take phenomenal care of you. Absolute best in the biz, those guys.
And hey, it doesn't have to be either or. You can look like Kenny and Renny. Come on now.
Kenny or Renny, and Kenny and Renny. You're right. Kenny and or, should I make that distinction?
No,
I
you
don't
shouldn't.
know. We'll figure it out. Figure it out. We'll just go with Kenny.
People
and
don't
Renny.
have to
Okay.
choose. Come on,
I'll
man.
write that down. I'll write
you can
that
have
down.
both. You can
Kenny
have both.
and Renny. Okay, done.
Have a seat.
We've had our marketing meeting in front of all these people. Now let's move on and let's go for our lamplighter of the night. Give me your lamplighter.
Oh, Morrissey's for. I mean, the puck movement on the Scheifele goal is much more impressive. But the fact that the Jets had been so frustrated by the Blues to that point, they had just given up a goal where Josh Morrissey thought it was offside. Jake Neighbors got behind the defense. I mean, Sean, you had the best angle at it. There was an angle where it looked like Neighbors did just an exceptional job. I think that, what you might have missed in real time, or what some people may have missed in real time, Sean, when Neil Pionk got a piece of the pass from Torrey Krug, it kind of disrupted the timing a little bit. Yeah. But Neighbors did just an exceptional job of holding the back skate on the line, and there just was not an angle that showed any white ice available. So
it wasn't. It was onside.
Right. So it was a matter of maybe an inch, but just an awesome job by Neighbors. Morrissey, raising his hand on the play, thinking that it was offside. Play was not called. Neighbors goes in, forehand, backhand, really nice move. But on the ensuing shift, 40 seconds later, Morrissey scores the goal that not only fires up the crowd, but also gets his team really rolling. Honestly, I just put the link in the chat room of our post-game hit for Sportsnet, Sean. Honestly, I think that's one of the most important periods the Jets have had this year. Because if they wilt after giving up that second goal, maybe they're shut out again. If for the seventh time in 9 games they score 2 or fewer against a team that's not just chasing them but trying to get back in the playoff race. The Blues went into today needing that win to get above 50 points. Now they look up at the Colorado Avalanche. They're 8 points behind the Avalanche, who hold 3 games in hand. The Jets are 16 points ahead of the Blues in the standings. And, Doug Armstrong has some tough decisions. Those tough decisions are getting easier every game the Blues play. Now losing 5 in a row.
They're done.
Even if they want to bring some of those guys back, they're going to have to move a lot of those UFAs. And we know there were a lot of scouts in the building today. Anyways, I don't want to get off track here. Definitely the Morrissey first is my lamplighter for all the aforementioned reasons, especially for the emotional element for a team that basically they needed to have their tension relieved, and when Josh beat Jordan Binnington with that wrister to the glove side, got the building going, it got his teammates going, and it was what cued the comeback for the Winnipeg Jets, who scored 4 unanswered in the third to earn an important victory to help them feel better about themselves going into the break.
The Blues are done. The Blues, they're selling. They could sweep the month of February and they still wouldn't be in a good enough position to believe that. Like, listen, this is one thing I was thinking about, Ken. Last year, we were saying early on about Kevin Cheveldayoff at the trade deadline that the numbers suggested they're not making the playoffs. And not just suggested, like they weren't making the playoffs. We were saying that early. This was not happening. Him doing that was taking all the best analytical information out there, and that analytical information telling him, don't make moves at the trade deadline. You don't need to pick anyone up. And in the end, what he did was he tried to send some out and bring some in. So he didn't really go wholesale. I think he just tried to stay afloat and try and, send some out, bring some in, even it out. But there's credence to the idea that like Stastny should have moved last year, right? That this is the numbers said so, right? Well, with the St. Louis Blues, they can run the table in the month of February, and the numbers will say you're done. Get what you can get out of this, and they've got a bunch of big pieces. I can't remember whether we got to it in the show. I don't think that we did. But Barbashev, you've been talking about him. Ryan O'Reilly and Vladdy Tarasenko. You want Vladdy Tarasenko? I think the guy's got 6 30-goal seasons, and one of them is a 40-goal season. And you've got Ryan O'Reilly, who last season, gave the Colorado Avalanche fits in the playoffs. Like, I mean, here we go. Who doesn't think that at some point the Jets are probably, if they want to get to the Stanley Cup, are going to have to face the Colorado Avalanche? Well, guess who is going to be available, who has done a pretty damn good job in the past of giving fits to the Colorado Avalanche? Ryan O'Reilly is that guy. And He's got a playoff MVP trophy. And then you've got Barbashev, who's on a sweetheart of a deal and great depth, would fit great into your roster. Like the St. Louis Blues, I had a conversation with Craig Berube today, are a team in transition, he said. And he said, while it may look in the goal scoring department like the torch has been passed, you watch a game like that tonight from Jordan Kyrou, who I thought was invisible, and they really could have used something out of him at some point. This is your leading scorer, a point per game guy. He did not pull on the rope for that team tonight. Craig Berube alluded to it, and the idea that this team, yes, they're in transition, and these guys look to have taken over the team scoring-wise. They haven't taken over the team leadership-wise, but regardless, they're already a team that's making the transition. You better that transition by moving the guys who are going to go and getting as much back as you can. That's a team that is going to be doing that. You are right on with your Lamplighter. That first goal of that game to me is just a guy who decides at some point he is going down and he's going to pick this team up on his shoulders, and he's going to go somewhere, pick this building up on his shoulders. Lamplighter goes to Josh Morrissey. You nailed it, Ken, as you usually do. Lamplighter, hey, if you are interested in a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale from our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company, you do what Kenny just did. You share with us your goal of the game, your Lamplighter of the game, and you are automatically entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, courtesy of our friends courtesy of our friends from TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to hand you your own frosty, delicious 8-pack, head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company. Join them in their tap room at 1290 Kenniston Avenue. Their food is great. Their beer is great. I don't know why you're not down there right now. That's where I'd be if I wasn't stuck here doing this show. Head on down there for the Lamplighter. And I want to announce the Lamplighter winner from our last show. That winner is Brady. Quite simply, Brady. I know a lot of last name Brady's. I know a lot of first name Brady's. I don't know if it's any of the ones that I know. I know a ton of them. But Brady, simple Brady, you are on the clock. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name and also send me an email. I can send you your voucher for your frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale from our great friends at TransCanada Brewing Company, and you will have your very own frosty, delicious 8-pack. Congratulations to you, Brady. You are on the clock. Okay, I'm going to talk about that afterwards because I want the Johnston Group got you covered play of the game from you, Ken. What do you got?
Yeah, I got a good. I got a digging deep for this one. To borrow from our good friends at Home Field. Also, for me, Sean, the we've got you covered is the stick pass while protecting the lead by Kyle Connor. After Josh Morrissey broke his stick and it ended up in the back of the net, Kyle Connor was very alert in handing the stick to the defenseman who needed it more than he did. He got out and tried to disrupt a few plays in the passing lane. And then, like the wily veteran that he is, according to Josh Morrissey, got to the bench at a safe time, found himself a stick, and made a smart chip off the boards to to Mark Scheifele. And then Wheeler got it and then back to Scheifele for the empty net goal. We know that there have been times where Kyle's defensive zone play has come under some criticism, and that was a smart play all around, and he got the play on the empty netter started with the really smart chip off the boards, ensuring the puck got out first and foremost, and secondly the puck gets over to Scheifele for the empty netter for his 31st of the game.
You know what? I'm going to go in a totally different direction. Josh Morrissey's response to the crowd is a response that is required because of how the crowd has conducted themselves in the last two games with the boos. I got to say something. I had a ton of respect after the last game when their head coach, Rick Bowness, was asked about the boos, and his response was, I'm surprised there weren't more boos. I love that because I'm going to tell you something right now. Josh Morrissey was fired up and had something to prove. The reason he had something to prove is because you fans stepped up this game and last game and the game before that, and you held the Winnipeg Jets accountable by booing. These people who tell you when you go into an arena, you support the home team no matter what, and the people who get upset at people for booing their home fans, Get that out of here. If your team is not giving you your money's worth, if your team is not giving you the requisite effort required for them to succeed in their game, it is your job as fans to get on that team. And that's one thing that I've loved over the last little while. I think for years, there was a feeling you shouldn't boo. Winnipeg Jets fans do not boo their team. When they started doing it, their captain clapped back last season at the idea of them booing in a television interview and kind of gave it to the fans. I'm okay with him doing that, but I don't think the fans should back down for 1 second. Everyone in this building comes in here and pays good money, and what they want to see is their money back in full value. That's what they should expect. Anyone who is buying a product should expect exactly that. And the fans came in here, and I will say this, the boos tonight I thought maybe were a little much, only because in the Philly game, there was evidence that the Jets needed to be booed. In the Sabres game, there was ample evidence that the Jets needed to be booed. Tonight, I think that things just kind of weren't going the Jets' way, so the boos that happened, maybe the boos were deserved, no doubt, for the power play, which we should get to later. But sure. I am all for the idea that if you are a fan in this building and you don't think the team is reacting properly or the way they should, and you think it's inexcusable, boo. Because tonight, what you saw from Josh Morrissey was a response to hearing those boos, was a response to hearing you say to them, you're not doing good enough, you need to do better, get your act together. That was him coming back and saying, did we get our act together? Did I do right? What do you think? I love that. And so for me, I've got the Johnston Group got you covered play of the game is the Winnipeg Jets fans, assisted by the Winnipeg Jets head coach, in holding the Winnipeg Jets accountable. Great stuff. I love that the fans were engaged. I love that they did that. I love the response. This is hockey. This is what it's supposed to be, an interaction between fans and players. That's what it's supposed to be. Congratulations to everyone all around in that. And congratulations and thank you to the Kenny and Renny OGs, the Johnston Group. You won't find two businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits, proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and teledoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. Ken, I want to introduce another topic, and I'm going to introduce it in an interesting way. This game reminds me of something. So the very last game of the 2016-2017 season, anyone who is in this building, it was the last game of the year. It was against the Nashville Predators. The Nashville Predators, if they won that game, were going to jump up to third place to the 8th seed, and we're going to be facing the first seed Chicago Blackhawks that year, who looked like they were ready to go out and win another cup. Now, we know what happened with Nashville. We know that they went on to go to the cup that year and lose to the lose to the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Jets won that game, and it was a nothing game for the Winnipeg Jets. Yet this barn was packed. Nothing game, last game of the season. The only thing on the line was kind of messing with a team that wasn't even really, a rivalry at that time, Ken. And I remember the Jets played with so much passion in that game, and they scored to tie it up late, I think, and then scored late to win that game. Blake Wheeler scored the goal. This place blew up. It went crazy. Blake Wheeler came to the bench afterwards. He had this huge reaction to the crowd. He was like celebrating with the crowd. The crowd was going nuts. You would have thought he had just scored in game 7 of a series to put them in the next, instead of it being a nothing game at the end of the year. And after the game, it was a Hockey Night in Canada game, and I asked him on the bench, just in a phenomenal, the best mood I've ever seen Blake Wheeler in. And I asked him why that goal had meant so much to him, because it clearly had. And he said, it just felt important in this building with our fans giving us what they were giving us. It felt important for us to send them off and let them know that we didn't get to where we wanted to go this year. We didn't get them to the show that we wanted to show off for them. That was our way of showing to our fans that we cared, that we're here, and that we're trying, and that we're moving forward. Well, to me, I look at that moment and I think that that was the very base foundation of the 2017-2018 season and what the Jets did that year. This game, Josh Morrissey's response reminds me of what Blake Wheeler said in that game, his post-game interview. If you haven't seen my post-game interview with Josh Morrissey, it was phenomenal. Probably one of the best post-game interviews I've done with a player here. He reminded me of that. The crowd reminded me of that. The interaction between the Jets and their fans reminded me of that. It's another one of the reasons, Ken, why I feel like this game has potential to be a real kind of boost, a rocket pack on the back of the Winnipeg Jets to take them forward going on this year. What do you think is the importance of this win?
Yeah, I mean, I said on our hit, I think it was one of the most important periods of the season for the Winnipeg Jets, and I'm not overstating that. We knew they needed to get to the break. We knew this group was mostly running on empty the last stretch of games, but when your coach challenges you to be more committed and to compete harder, you better try to respond. And the Jets did respond, in all efforts, not just in terms of scoring, defending, really impressive. I think that it was an incredibly important game for them mentally. And I mean, Sean, for those people who didn't see the interview, I mean, maybe tell them a little bit more about what Josh said and why he felt it was important. I mean, for this group that had been feeling a little bit of tension of late, and not just tension from the coaching staff or from the players, but they kind of sensed, like, don't you think that Josh was kind of getting some 2018-19 vibes himself, even though he obviously missed the last quarter of the year? He obviously remembers what happened to this group down the stretch where they slipped from first in the division and then had to play St. Louis in the first round and instead of Nashville or somebody else.
So if I'm going back to that interview I had with him, one of the things you don't want to affect the story as a journalist. And one way I kind of feel bad about is you were talking about him bringing up tension. I introduced tension to him in the first question. So basically my question to him was, there was a ton of tension in this building. There was a big comeback there. You had that huge response. What did that game feel like? And he said so in the interview. He said, you're right, there was a lot of tension. And for those who didn't see it, he said there was a lot of tension in the building here. There was a lot of tension with the fans. He said there was a lot of tension with the media leading into this game, he'd said. And I guess I wasn't surprised to hear that, because he'd pushed back on a couple of questions, one that Murat Atesh from The Athletic had asked, and then
Friday.
Another one on Friday. And then another question that I had asked where he'd said to me, like, it sounds like we're ringing the alarm bells here. And then they promptly went out and lost that game to the Philadelphia Flyers. It was funny in the interview after the game, he stopped to say, not you, Sean, I never feel tension with you, which was, a nice way of, cutting the tension that probably he was feeling. And maybe his tongue is firmly planted in his cheek when he says that. But I think that there's something there. I think that there's something to the importance of how that felt and the way that they basically, I don't think that they were playing the St. Louis Blues tonight. I think that they were wrestling with themselves, and they body slammed themselves in that moment and pinned them and stood up and jumped on the corner turnbuckle and put their arms up to an adoring crowd. That's what we felt there. And it just feels like a boost to me. Now, I'll say this, Ken. The funny part about it is, going into this game, we probably would have thought this All-Star break couldn't have come soon enough. This is the perfect time for that All-Star break. Kind of changing my mind now. I kind of think it would have been nice to take that win and see what the Jets did with it, go forward and build. Now, can the Jets bottle how they feel right now and carry it through the next little while until they play the Chicago Blackhawks 2 Saturdays from now? Yeah, maybe they can. But boy, oh
you get
boy,
to feel good for 9 days, Sean. I would say
for sure.
For a group that's been wavering a little bit, I would say it's still important.
And to my point that I think that game against Nashville at the end of the 2017 season, if I think that was the foundation of them doing well, they had an entire off season to ruminate on that and come back. So if I'm going to make the comment that that's part of the foundation, then this very easily could be part of the foundation of how they play their game going forward, getting their confidence back. Josh Morrissey was phenomenal in that interview. He was in great spirits where he clearly hadn't been in great spirits earlier on. Just to your point about the feeling good, like I just think there's just a massive knot that was stuck in the back of the Winnipeg Jets, and it just released on them right now. Now they get to go out and enjoy themselves. Now they're in a situation where, yes, they're 7 points up on the Minnesota Wild, 8 points up on the Colorado Avalanche. And yes, those teams each have 4 games in hand on the Jets, win those games in hand, and suddenly, the Jets are looking at potentially falling into a wild card spot, but that's not going to happen. They're not going to win those games in hand. Their win percentage tells you that. The Jets just put themselves that much further into a good spot so they can breathe easy heading into the break here. This really is a moment where the Jets took a giant weight off of their shoulders and have put themselves in a really good place going forward. I did not get to talk to him. I was not part of the scrum or saw the very end of the scrum when he went and talked to everyone. But I'll say this, he was downright chipper, like laughing, making jokes, really having a good time with the media, which I think is important too. If Josh was feeling tension with the media, the fact that he was yucking it up with all of you when I walked into the room at the end of that, what did you take away from how he was reacting with the media afterwards?
I just felt that Josh put the joy back into the game already at the morning skate, Sean. We know he stayed out late. He was working on one-timers with Nate Schmidt for quite a bit of time. I know you went down a little bit earlier for the Sportsnet meeting, but he stayed out late. And the reason why I was looking closely to this is because I had this interview scheduled with Josh, and I knew the weekend didn't go great for the Jets, so you always wonder what kind of demeanor, on a game day you hate to bother a player, but Josh suggested Monday was a good day to do it because Sunday the team had a mandatory day off. So he was already in great spirits in the morning. I think, he's super excited about what this week is going to be like for him and his family. And he wanted to go in in a good place. I mean, I love, Mark Scheifele. Sean, you were involved with the interview with Scheifele when I was talking with Josh about, he said all along these guys don't mind being challenged, but when someone challenges you as a high-end player, you want to respond. I mean, every person wants to respond. It doesn't matter what role you play in a team. You want to do a good job. And, the fact that Josh was able to exhale a little bit today, I think is important for him for sure. Because, this guy's an important leader on this team. And, he played one of his best games of the season. So that's leadership. I mean, when you are feeling tension, your ability to A, put on a brave face, but B, also get back to the love of the sport and the emotion and to let other people in on that emotion. I think that's a very liberating feeling for the player, but it's also something where it rubs off on people. I mean, Mark Scheifele is not the swearing type. He said friggin' and frick in his post-game address. That's how fired up he was about the situation and watching one of his closest friends have that kind of an emotional spark for his group. So, yeah, I mean, again, could it be one game out of 82 at the end of the year? Sure, it could. But to me, it certainly felt different. And in listening to the players and to Rick Bowness, it felt different also. And I also, the reason why I think that's important, Sean, is like this was the biggest test under the Rick Bowness regime so far, right? And, through 2 periods, the Jets have been playing well, but things weren't going well in terms of the scoreboard, and they were getting frustrated by Jordan Binnington making a bunch of saves, but they weren't getting enough traffic. So the realization that they had more to give, but didn't have to sort of go off path or off track to get it, to me was another important part of the equation here this evening. And, we talk about, picking up your teammates. Sean, you talked about the aggressive pinch that Dylan Sandberg made in the third period. It was a really, really good play by Jake Neighbors along the boards, right? Yep. To get the chip into the neutral zone to Josh Lee. to find to find the young Russian on the back door there for the goal. And I said earlier that Morrissey's goal came after the neighbor's goal. That was inaccurate. That was the goal in the second. That was Alexandrov's goal. Morrissey scored 40 seconds after.
Right.
Sorry about that.
As journalists, balance is important for us. And so I'm going to bring this in here and make sure that we handle a little bit of the balance here, because there should be balance to be talked about here. Owen says, I don't think half a period of well-played hockey can whitewash the last few weeks. We'd be having a very different conversation if they lost and it almost happened. There is lots of work to do here. I see that there's other people in the chat who are, taking the same tact. And let's handle this right now. The St. Louis Blues, they didn't look good in that game. Like the goal that leads to Mark Scheifele's, the turnover that leads to Mark Scheifele's goal is a terrible turnover by an established defenseman. Like, this is not the Jets putting the St. Louis Blues in trouble. This is a guy turning around and carelessly firing a puck away. And that happened numerous times today. I was watching some other analysts around in the country. I saw that Arpon Basu from the Montreal chapter of The Athletic was watching this game and said, looked at this game and talked, talked about how horrible the Blues looked. And let's be honest here, the Blues did not look like a really good team in this. So what the Winnipeg Jets did here was hand the fifth straight loss to a team that had found a way to lose 4 straight games before this, by a team that lost very recently 5-0 to the Arizona Coyotes, by a team that hadn't managed to score a first period goal in any of those games. The Winnipeg Jets are the first team that the St. Louis Blues have had a lead on in this stretch here. So if you take a look at the Jets' performance against the St. Louis Blues, it may be, this is the closest the St. Louis Blues have come to winning in the last little while. So, maybe if you're a St. Louis Blues fan and you're watching this game, you're thinking, well, the Winnipeg Jets didn't really impress me that much. They were the one team that we actually had on the ropes and kind of let them off with some terrible play. There should be something said about that. The St. Louis Blues are not a good team. You talked about it. They're headed towards dismantling their team because this is not a playoff team. The way they've played, they don't deserve to be. Having talked to their head coach, he clearly realizes that this team isn't very good. Some of the conversations I had with him, their defense, which looks like it's somewhat capable, Ken, and has some pretty big players on there, they're not activating this season. And the reason why is because the defense don't trust their offense. This is what I heard from their head coach. The reason why they are not jumping up in the play is because they haven't been able to trust their forwards to cover them off. You talk behind the scenes about, Jordan Kyrou putting up a lot of points, but this is one of your leaders in points and apparently is just an absolute turnover machine. Again, we talked about him today in a game where they really could have used his skill. He had the one opportunity against Connor Hellebuck and missed the net. If you're not going to be very good defensively and if you're going to turn over the puck, then the one thing you should be is that guy that pots that goal when you get the opportunity. That didn't happen here tonight. So all the people out in the chat room right now who are saying, let's pump the brakes for a second here, you have every right to say that, and you are probably right to say that. This is a St. Louis Blues team that is not a good team. They're done for this season. They're stripping down to the bare parts. So what the Winnipeg Jets did here tonight is pulled out a late victory against a very poor team, and yes, they have more to prove. Let's be clear about something. 11 of the Jets' last 13 games came against teams below the playoff line. This should have been a time where they took off and ended up being about 6 or 8 points up on the rest of the field in the Western Conference. That's not the case. They're still trailing first place in their division. It's going to get harder, folks. They're playing better teams in the month of February. So for them to continue what we saw here tonight, they'll get an early head start against the Chicago Blackhawks, who will be, the 12th of 14 teams that they've played that is below the playoff line. After that, it gets harder. There's some really tough road games in there. They got to swing through New York. They're going to be playing the Colorado Avalanche at some point, which is going to get interesting. all you people who are saying, let's pump the brakes here, you've got your foot squarely on the brake, and that's maybe right where it should be.
Yeah, I mean, and also too, I mean, Josh and both Mark Scheifele said they're going to need to be better down the stretch. But I mean, let's also not confuse this game with the Jets being poor for 40 minutes and then cranking it up in the third. Shots on goal were 31-19. I don't think the Blues were taking it to the Jets by any stretch of the imagination either. Was it a perfectly played game? No. Yeah, the Jets' power play totally let them down. They were 0 for 6. I think they're 1 for 20 in their last stretch of games here. So guess what? That's not good enough. But for a team that had struggled in many areas, they were much better in most of those areas. And you can only play the teams that are on the schedule. And I would even say, too, I mean, Buffalo, yes, they're below the playoff line by points, but by points percentage, for sure, for one of those games, they were above the playoff line, I think, by mere percentage points, too. So they've also shown that they can play well against better teams. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock. It's a fact, for sure, and I'm not disputing that, but the Jets know they need to be better. It's going to be a 30-game sprint to the finish. They got to be better in a ton of areas. But much like we've said before, the Jets weren't as good as they were in winning 8 of 9, nor were they as bad as they played in losing 5 of 7. So I think we're at an interesting point for their team. They needed to get to the break. They're there. Now's their chance to get healthy, to get rejuvenated, and they'll need every ounce of energy in the last stretch because, like you mentioned, Sean, it's not a very easy schedule. And here's the other thing. In the last 10 or 20 games, those games against bottom feeders are not easy games because those teams play freely and don't care about raising their risk profile. So Jets want to be sharp. They want to be playing their best hockey in April, March and April. But you also can't coast through February. Otherwise, now there's all this pressure on in March and April. So, again, we're going to learn a lot about this team in the next 30 games. We've learned a lot about them through 52. There have been a lot of strides taken and a lot more need to be taken if this team wants to be a playoff team that wins multiple rounds. And, one of the things we should also discuss before we get to the top of the hour, not the top of the hour, but the show, big trade in the NHL today. I mean, I had mentioned Bo Horvat.
Before we get into that, you got to give our main man, Sweet Lou, a shout out.
For sure, folks. If you have some realty needs that you'd like to be met, you can contact our main man, Lou Furlan. If you're buying, you're selling, you're looking to see what that house down the street's worth, maybe looking to move to another neighborhood, Lou's your guy at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty. You can reach him at 204-791-9971 or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@loufurlan.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. And his website is www.loufurlan.ca. Lou Furlan, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community and of projects like ours, the Kenny and Renny Show, of which we are eternally grateful.
Gotta love Sweet Lou, and we know that the chat room do. So good stuff there, Ken.
Okay, one quick one before we go to the trade on the health front. So we had a couple updates today. Mason Appleton expected to shed the non-contact jersey when the Jets are back on the ice on February the 9th. Also expecting David Gustafsson to be back on the ice there as well. Rick Bowness kind of left the door open but wasn't certain, won't be certain for a few days before finding out if Dylan DeMello and his lower body injury will allow him to be back coming out of the break. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on that front. But, the Jets' defense core as a whole was, I thought they were pretty solid today. As you know, I think the pairing of Dylan and Schmidt is one that I would like to see more of in those final 30 games. I thought Kyle Capobianco acquitted himself quite well for a guy who hadn't played in quite some time. Quiet game in a good way. 2 shots on goal and 11-16 of ice time, 18 shifts, 37 second average. I liked a lot about his game. I thought he moved his feet well. I thought he made smart decisions, activated when necessary, and defended pretty well. So I thought that he did a nice job playing on his offside and on the third pairing with Dylan Samberg.
Okay, I want to bring this up here. I'm going to say something quick before you get into your thing. Beer League says Horvat went for a small price, in my opinion. Does this set the precedent for a discounted market for us? I just have to say this. The one thing I don't think, because I was starting to think about this, the one thing I don't think people are putting into perspective is, so Anthony Beauvillier is a former first-round pick who's done a lot of good things for that Islanders team, okay? And there could be an argument based on what's happening with the Islanders that there would be players on there that if you got them away to a better situation and more dynamic players, they may not be that bad. I've liked Anthony Beauvillier as a player, covering the Islanders in the playoffs at times. He's been a good player, so I don't think people are giving him the credit. I don't know much about this prospect, and I never like to play that game where I don't look for these guys, so I don't know a lot about the prospect, but it sounds like he was the key to this. And it's a first-round pick, which is possibly going to slip below the playoff line. And before you bring that up, Ken, I just want to ask the chat room, if you think that this was a steal, what would the equivalent trade have been for the Winnipeg Jets? What would the player that would have come out of the Jets lineup, the prospect that the Jets would have had to move, and the first round pick, what would that have looked like? Who is the player out of the Jets lineup that would be gone?
Yeah, no, and so just a quick one on Ratty. I mean, this was a guy that was projected to be a high first rounder for a while at the top of the draft. That slipped a bit. So Ratty slipped to the second, yes, but he had been projected to be a high pick. And Sean, you're 100% right. The Jets don't have a guy who has scored 21, 18 twice, or 15 that they were willing to remove from their current roster.
Exactly.
Right? They don't have that player that they would have been looking to move in a deal like this one. And, I mean, the prospect levels you can debate all you want, but, I mean, it's similar to, I'm not sure if it would be Perfetti. Craig Zamzo says a first Perfetti and Brad Lambert.
Yeah.
I mean, similar, but I mean, like, Beauvillier has a track record of goals. I mean, yes, his production has dipped this year to 9 goals and 20 points. He has 102 NHL goals in 457 NHL games. The Jets weren't moving anybody with that type of resume in a deal like this. It was always going to be for more futures. I mean, I watched the Jim Rutherford Patrick Allvin presser. Jim Rutherford basically went out and got what he said he was going to get. Somebody in his mid-20s who's an established NHL player. He got a high-end prospect and a lottery-protected first-round draft pick. So, I mean, could the Jets have made a better offer? Possibly. But to me, either Vancouver thought they got a better deal or the Jets weren't willing to make a higher offer, because if Rutherford thought he was waiting would help him get a better deal, he was under no obligation to make the trade a month in advance. So he's obviously happy with the deal. And again, is Beauvillier a guy that can play with Elias Pettersson? I mean, maybe he is. Maybe he'll play him with JT Miller. I mean, these guys have skilled centers on their team, and Beauvillier is a guy who's maybe looking to get unlocked in a different system where he can play a little bit more freely offensively, and we'll see how it works out. I mean, it's always, I mean, we rush to judgment all the time. Oh, that doesn't seem like much. Well, it's essentially, no, it's not 3 first rounders, but I mean, Ratty was projected to be a first that dropped. Beauvillier was a first, and they're getting a first. So, I mean, were the Jets willing to toss in Ville Heinola? I mean, yeah, that's another first round pick, but I think it's super interesting. And the other thing that, I mean, some people may not realize, Sean, Jim Rutherford loves the preemptive strike. I mean, when he was the team on the other side trying to load up, he always tried to load up when he was in Pittsburgh, not the day before or the day of. He always tried to get that deal done 3-4 weeks in advance. So I'm not surprised he made the deal. And for people wondering why trade one of the team's best players a month out, I mean, the Canucks want to be in a better or a more advantageous situation to help enhance their chances to get Connor Bedard in the lottery. So that's why you move your top goal scorer a month in advance. But they also had to have liked the deal a bit.
This is a good comment from Top Line Media. With Horvat off the board, does this lead to Meyer off the board shortly? He's up next. A trade within these 11 days. I guess that's the question I always run into here, Ken, because to your point, the Canucks would have kind of pulled the entire situation. Probably were sick and tired of the ugliness that came with the Bruce Boudreau situation. Maybe they're concerned about leaks and this kind of stuff getting out now with what happened with that situation, so they didn't want to mess around with it. But clearly they got what they thought they could best get. I always wonder in situations like this, does this trigger the stampede, right? Does this create the scenario by which, if you're the Winnipeg Jets and you think that you need to go make a deal, I know that for them it makes the most sense to just sit and hold on as long as you can to open up as much cap space as you probably can. And let's be honest, it's the one really big advantage the Winnipeg Jets have going into the trade deadline is the sheer amount of cap space that they have. But do you have to move the plan up after something like this happens? Do you have to be concerned? Because I was reading a lot of media out of Colorado. Sounds like Colorado would be interested in adding a guy like Ryan O'Reilly or Jonathan Toews. There's a lot of chatter about it in those markets. Timo Meier is a guy that I could see a team like Dallas really like making a strong push for. Carolina or other teams like
Jersey
that.
too.
New Jersey is another one that wants to make a big splash here. So with the competition out there now, does this start to become an early, like, is the music playing on the game of musical chairs at this stage? And does that change the way that Kevin Cheveldayoff was planning to handle this trade deadline?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it does, raise the urgency level slightly, but I think it raises it for other teams because, what have we been hearing the last stretch? We've been hearing Boston, Seattle, among the many teams interested. So guess what? Lou Lamoriello decided he didn't want to be left at musical chairs with trying to pick up the scraps. He made his best offer on January 31st, and he got the player he wanted. So to me, I think that he will re-sign with that would be a steep price to pay for a rental, Sean. So you have to expect that he would be a guy that the Islanders believe they can sign long term. And
he said that he'd had no conversations of the sort.
And that's fair. Yes.
But you never know what the agent may have said. That maybe the agent has had conversations with him and kind of put out there like, look, if these teams are sniffing around, how many of them would you be interested in having a conversation with? So they may have already done their due diligence.
No, and my point is, I think that that 8 for 8's been getting tossed around, and if Lou Lamoriello doesn't think he can afford 8 by 8. You're not making that deal. You're below the playoff line.
Yeah.
So, and you have your center depth includes Matthew Barzal, Brock Nelson, Pierre-Gabriel Pajot, and Casey Cizikas. So you don't need a centerman per se unless you want to move somebody to the wing. So I think, Lou knows what he's looking for. And this is a big swing. What we've been hearing all week from our colleagues like Jeff Merrick on his show, what are the Islanders going to do? Do they think their window's closed? Well, obviously they don't think it's closed because they just went out and got one of the biggest pieces on the market. So, in order to answer your bigger picture question now, it all depends on what approach Kevin Cheveldayoff is planning to take. I don't think that Bo Horvat was their number one priority, even though I think in some ways he made sense for the Winnipeg Jets in some regards. I think that, I asked Kevin Cheveldayoff about this too, about maybe taking the approach of teams like Tampa and Colorado previously, where you're augmenting with kind of not necessarily role players, because that's not fair to Arturi Lehkonen, but you're looking to maybe add a couple different important pieces, but maybe you're looking for more complementary pieces than high-end pieces. And I don't think for a second the Jets are out on Timo Meier, so they still might go big game hunting in terms of what the New York Islanders just did. But what you don't know is, how big the swing is going to be. So, Carolina to me would be another team that would make sense on the Meier sweepstakes because they don't generally want to load up on rentals either. So there's obviously a big QO, but they had a big QO with another certain player they got from Montreal, and they didn't worry about paying him, and now he's their fourth line center at times.
Geez, this is Jeff Bowes says the big story of this game is the change lines. Like last show, no one wants to talk about the elephant in the room. We have too many high-end scores for this lineup. We need guys that can do other. Yeah, I like the start of the comment. I'm digesting the rest of it. I'm not sure I agree with it, but the one thing is, we cannot escape this show without talking about the jumbled lines that Rick Bowness put together, and then how he handled his bench after that. Try and keep it tight, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, it was a message to his skilled players. I mean, Rick kind of backtracked a little bit and said how important it was for having that defensive element, but he also wanted to get the skilled players putting their work boots back on. And that's what they did. I mean, he asked their skilled players to play harder in both ends, to manage the puck better, and you saw a better effort. I mean, Jeff, I like part of what you said, but I mean, we just been talking the last stretch. The Jets went 6 of 8, scoring 2 or fewer. So how can you have too many offensive players and not produce offense? So I don't buy that, and I don't think that. I mean, I think that those skilled players have shown over the course of the year that they have been committed defensively at times as well. Can they get better at it? Of course they can. But Mark Scheifele just scored his 31st goal. I mean, the Jets have a bunch of 20-goal scorers already, and other guys that are going to get there. So, do they need more? Like, could they use a little bit more grit, or guys that are more defensively aware? Absolutely, they could, and that's why Sean and I have been talking about guys like Ivan Barbashev as guys they need to look at adding, rather than just a Bo Horvat that brings them another element of offense, but maybe doesn't have as much sandpaper in his game. So, I think they'll be looking for a mixture. But I mean, a team can never have enough. I mean, the Jets they were around 12th going into this week in terms of goals for. So I don't think that they're, and again, I understand what you're saying. Maybe you're just saying the Jets are too skilled and don't do some of the other things well enough. And that's fair. They need to do it when it counts. And outside of 2018, they haven't done that enough when it matters most. So that is a valid concern. I don't think that the Jets need to trade skilled players for grinders. That I don't see as the answer either. But I do think they need to augment their roster composition with a few guys. I think they need to add someone that has some Stanley Cup success, plays a feisty game. Like, this is why I use Barbashev. Is he a perfect player? No. I mean, he was a 26-goal scorer last year, and I think he had 60 points. That was an outlier season. But he is a guy that can give you 12 to 15 consistently. So, anyways, the way the Jets ran their lines, I mean, I didn't love the setup, but I loved the idea behind the setup, if that makes sense. I didn't think there were going to be lines that were going to be used long term, but this was not meant to be long term. Sean, it reminds me of when the Jets put Patrick Laine with Adam Lowry and Brandon Tanev in Finland. It was a reminder for Laine to get the feet moving, get the work boots on, and then get moving. And what did he do? He got a hat trick in the first game in Helsinki in his home country. So sometimes you're just sending a little message to the skilled players to get moving. And again, people going crazy about Nikolai Ehlers on the fourth line to start the game. Who cares? He was never going to finish there. It was a wake-up call. He played hard early. He got moved to a line that you expected him to be on, and then he set up the tying goal with the beautiful play. So a lot of guys have to be better. The Jets know this. And after, when they come out of the break, they're going to have to work on getting their lines locked in.
Okay, just going to finish off with this one, let people read that. And then I'm happy to see that Top Line Media was still here, because Brady, who won the lamplighter, says that he's won it before and he wanted to gift it back to the chat room. He said for us to hand it out. We don't do that. You got to do it. So when I pressed him on it, he handed out the Frosty Delicious 8-pack of lamplighter Amber Ale to Top Line Media. So Top Line Media, you and I have been in contact before, so I know you know how to get a hold of me at SN Sean Reynolds. Give me your full name and your email address, and I will send you a voucher for a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. Love it when our chat room gets together and is generous with each other. Thank you, Brady, for doing that. I had not known that you had won before this. And now it's time for our home field comment of the game, our home field Dig Deeper Award to be handed out, and that is going to go to Merle Peters, who says he's glad Connor is saying, to heck with the Lady Bing. I'm going to start pushing back. You know what? I thought this was important, Ken. At that moment in the game when I saw Kyle Connor doing this, I was kind of like, okay, well, he's saying to heck with the Lady Bing and he's going after this. But I thought that was important. I thought that edge in this game was important. And I do think to a degree, unless you do not have an ounce of that inside you, the Lady Bing trophy to me, to a degree, is a little bit of a nonsense trophy. And I say that because there's value in being able to, like, look at the value that Pierre-Luc Dubois is able to bring to this team, because he is the antithesis of the Lady Bing trophy, right? Well, having the ability to do that every once in a while, to like get your team fired up, to give a guy a shot in the face, to rough things up, to show the other team that you're not taking that, I can see how competing for the Lady Bing can hamstring you in certain situations. And tonight I looked at what Kyle Connor did, and I thought, there you go. This is a guy who is unencumbered by the chase for that trophy. And I liked what I saw in that moment, and I would like to see more of it. And I would especially like to see more of it down the stretch as they push and compete and try to elbow room for themselves down the stretch. I love this comment, Merle Peters, and that's why, Merle Peters, you have won the Home Field Dig Deeper Award, and you will get your own Home Field Kenny and Renny shovel, your own trunk shovel. All you got to do is direct message me, and I know you've done it before because you usually share your lamplighter with me by direct message. Direct message me, send me your full name, which I know is Merle Peters, and send me an email to which I can send you your voucher, and you will have your very own Home Field / Kenny and Renny trunk shovel. Congratulations, Merle. Great job. Ken, great job to you as usual. Chat room,
Home
you were
Field
on
for
fire
marketing
again.
and more.
Yes, no doubt. Chat room, you were on it as usual, and I get it. The break is coming up here now. Everyone's going to be quiet for a little while. You got it all out. You got all the juices out, and I appreciate that.
They got their
click
emotion
a like.
going.
If you haven't subscribed to the Kenny and Renny YouTube channel, I don't know what the heck is going on with you. Get it
Got to
together.
wake up.
Do so.
That's what you got to
Come on.
do.
Figure it out here, and I'll end this show the way I end all our shows for the next little while. If you appreciate the conversations happening in these spaces with shows like Kenny and Renny or the Illegal Curve Hockey Show or Winnipeg Sports Talk, please appreciate the sponsors for all of our shows who are fighting to keep these conversations going in these spaces for us. That's Vittorio Rossi, Trans-Canada Brewing Company, the Johnston Group, Lou Ferlin, and Home Field. Thank you so much. If anyone is going anywhere or taking any holidays, enjoy those. Ken and I know we will talk to you again after the Chicago game 2 Saturdays from now. Bye-bye, everybody.